In 2020, I lost my son. The night before he passed away, I talked to him for hours. And he talked about the things that I wanted for him, the things that, he loved football, but he wasn't disciplined. But the fact that I was able to talk to him, to hear his heart, to hear his frustration, and some things that we were trying to put in place. And for the next day, for him to be gone, to transition. When I heard the news, I was shocked. Part of my life had died. It had become numb. I just lost it. And shortly after losing my son, my dad passed away. I remember he called me up on the phone, and I could hear it in his voice. He died in February. So when I tell you about loss and grief, my prayer was, before I fell off, was, Lord, my son has passed away, but it's not my time to die.
If you've ever experienced deep loss and wondered, how am I supposed to keep going? You need to hear this. In just a few years, she lost her son, her dad, her grandson, and her mom. And instead of letting that pain define her, she made a decision. She turned it into something meaningful. She wrote, she created, and she followed what the Most High placed on her heart. Because here's the truth. Procrastination doesn't just delay your future, it steals it. And if you've been questioning your purpose or wondering, what am I really meant to do? This conversation is going to speak to you.
People see now is the end result of who I am. I am a mother. I was a teen mother. I got pregnant at the age of 13 years old. I had my first child at 14. So my oldest child is, I'm only 14 years older than she is. And so she'll be 52 soon. And so, being a teen mom, by the time that I was 18, I had 3 children. I graduated at the age of 17. I come from a broken home. My mother was single. She was a single parent. She didn't graduate from high school, but my mother always harped on education. I remember graduating from high school, and when they handed me my diploma, my mother and my 2 small children, mind you, I was pregnant with my 3rd child at 17. My mother walked at the end of the aisle when I came off stage, she and my 2 children, and she said, "Give me my high school diploma," because she was adamant that I was going to finish high school. And by the grace of God, I was able to finish high school. I did go get a scholarship to go to college, but I didn't go right away because, again, I was pregnant. I didn't go into the next semester. And I went to college. I went to a junior college. But even during that transition of being a young mom, a single mother raising children, that was one of the things that my mother taught me, was about perseverance and having the tenacity that no matter what stage you're in, if you want to, you could do it. It's not easy. It was not easy being a teen mom. Can you imagine? There were so many things that I was faced with because of the decisions, but I wanted to do something great. I didn't know what at that time, but I wanted to do something great. So I did that, worked this job for 10 years. The Lord blessed me. I was promoted to another job. And, I always say that God has angels along the way in running this marathon of life. There were people that God strategically put in my life they saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself at that time because I was so bogged down about my own situation. And so God strategically put people in my life that will encourage me and that will say, "Celeste, you have what it takes. You could do it." And so I went and I started working at this acute hospital. It was a large hospital in St. Louis. It was an indigent hospital, where they take care of the poor. And so from
Mm-hmm.
there, I went on and got my undergrad degree. I had an associate's, but I got my undergrad degree. And there
Right.
was this guy who really he was in development. He kept saying, "You could do this, you could do this," and he believed in what I had, and he kept just saying, "Celeste, you could do it."
Yeah.
And the boss that I
Mm.
had, bless his heart, my mentor, he's deceased now, Mr. Jackson. He believed
Mm-hmm.
in me too, you know. And so God blessed me in that season, and I worked that job, and God released me from that job. Here I was making more
Mm.
money. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I've arrived, you know, make it from home.
Mm.
And then here I lose the job because one of the things that I do know, Sandy, is God
Yeah.
don't want us to get comfortable in the season. He want us to be
That's
able
right.
to be pivot and fluid and flexible.
Mm.
So I was released from that job and I was depressed. I didn't know what I was going to do. How was I going to
Yeah.
take care of my children? How was I going to pay my bills?
Mm.
All these things were going on, and again,
Mm.
God had some more angels in my life because when
Yeah.
I lost my job, there was this one ex coworker.
All
I
right.
hadn't worked in 3 months. My ex coworker was knocking on my door one day, and
Mm-hmm.
by the time I get to the door, I had groceries. My porch was full of
Wow.
groceries. Okay,
Wow.
I had another person who was a sales rep,
Amazing.
and he came and he called me one day and he said, it was the Avenue. He said, I went to the Avenue and I put my credit card down and I want you to go and buy you a suit for your next job.
Wow.
And when I say God had strategically put angels in my life that were blessing me,
Mm.
that would send me checks in the mail, that would pay my rent. I didn't have rent back then because God had blessed me in that area. But pay my lights, buy me groceries. When school started, the same gentleman who bought the groceries took me and my daughter shopping for school clothes. So when I say strategically, during the
Yeah.
time that it was unsure for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do or where I was going. God had strategically put angels in my path. I was serving God. You know, I was serving God. I was tithing. At that time, I got $170 for unemployment. I was tithing on that. But God was still faithful in my lack because, you know, even even not working, I volunteered. I went to the prisons. I went to the drug centers. I taught Bible study there. You know,
Mm.
I was on the street ministry. I helped people doing
Wow.
that. I didn't allow my situation or my circumstance to stop
Mm.
doing what God had called me to do. Let me tell you, somebody is listening to this. And
Mm-hmm.
they said, Dr. C, that's good for you, but I don't think I could do it. Yes, you can.
Mm.
It could be
Yeah.
done. You know, you just have to get out of yourself. And I think
Mm.
sometimes we get to the point in life we say, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
so I was challenged in that way in my finances, and
Yeah.
God blessed me. You know,
Yeah.
so after losing that job, I took this other job I didn't really like. At that
Yeah.
time, my youngest son William was alive, and
Mm.
he said, "Mom, where are you going?" I said, "I think I'm going to take this job. I'm making less money, but I need a job." He
Yeah.
said, "Why would you take a job that you don't like?" I said, "Because I need to make
Mm.
money. I need to bring money
Yeah.
in the house."
Yeah.
And I remember that because one thing, of course, my pride got in the way. Like this little bitty money that I'm gonna take, but I was
Mm.
faithful. I was
Yeah.
faithful in taking that job. And Sandy, let me tell you, that was one of the best jobs that I had. When I say one of the
Wow.
best jobs, I didn't know what God was setting me up for. That was one of the best jobs. It was like at a call center, a durable medical uh, center place where I worked. It was a bunch of women there. And when I say that it was the most fun place to work on Fridays, we had trivia, and whatever team won, they got to go home early and still
Yeah.
get paid. Uh, they did acts of kindness, where doing acts of kindness week, somebody come on the job and change my oil, uh, things
Wow.
like that. When I say God strategically, he put angels in our way. Sometimes we don't see it because we are so caught up in our own
Yeah,
situation, in our own
that's right.
mindset, that we fail to see God's goodness. So that job folded. The
Mm-hmm.
fun job that I had, the place where I love to be, I had came down here for a conference in 1996. I came down here for a conference, a church conference. And I said to myself, if I ever move, this is the place that I'm going to move. See,
Yeah.
we got to be careful in what we speak, because God will bring it to pass. That's what I said. I knew the area in where I was going to stay. I said, if I
Yeah.
move to Georgia, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
move to Smyrna, Georgia. I knew that. The Bible
Yeah.
talks about the church of Smyrna. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to move here. Lo and behold, my
Mm-hmm.
mentor that was in St. Louis had moved here. And I had a dream a year before coming to the conference that he and
Yeah.
I were working together. And guess what?
Right.
When I
Mm-hmm.
came here, it was not my intention to call him, but we were delayed one day because the young lady that rode with me decided it was a breach. I was upset that we stayed a day. So I said, while I'm here, I might as well call him and tell him. He came, he and his wife, they took me out to dinner, and I said, do you have a job for me here? He said, no.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, I don't have a job for you. And then his wife said,
Yeah.
yes, you do. He said, if I gave her a job, she wouldn't even come. And guess what? I said, if you offer me a job, I will come. He said, Celeste, I know you won't come. I said, I will come.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you'll
Mm-hmm.
leave St. Louis and come to Georgia? I said, yes. And that was in November. In February, he called me and he said, are you serious about a job? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
yes. And guess
Mm-hmm.
what? By
Yeah.
May,
Mm-hmm.
I I came down. That was February. I came down in April. Came down in the last of March. That
Mm-hmm.
same day, I had a job and a place. I had a house to stay in.
Wow.
God had strategically put me in alignment. He had put strategically. I had a job and a house, and people did not. My mother did not believe it. She said, "He hired you." I said, "Yeah." The same day I went, I didn't see. He said, "Go to Human Resources, fill out the application, go to
Mm.
Employee Help, do the drug test." That's what he told me to do, you know. And then when I finished doing all that, he had meetings, and I sat and waited. He said, "Come on, let's go have lunch." And when we were eating lunch, he said, "Did you think I was gonna bring you down here and interview you? I already know who you are. I know what
Can I
you
be
are."
honest? Can I interrupt you for a minute? Like seriously, I am blown away. Like I'm really, really like blown away. I'm feeling your story so much, and I'm like, wow,
Yes.
I'm blown away.
So
And
when I tell
how old were you? Sorry, at that time, how old were you?
I was 39 when I moved here.
Mm.
And my mother was like, "You're almost 40 years old. You're going to uproot yourself and you're going to move to another state. Sandy, I have no family that's here except for my daughter
Oh,
and her family. I had no family here. I only knew him. She said, why would you
wow.
do that? And I had to realize, this is one of the things that I had to realize. Just like the
Mm.
Lord told Abraham to move to a different country,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah,
stood on. I
yeah.
stood that if this was going to be my Canaan, this place
Yeah.
was going to be my Canaan. This is where God was going to establish me. This is where God was going to bless me
Mm.
abundantly. You know, at that time, my children were young adults.
Mm.
They were in their 20s, 19, 20, and 21. And my mother
Mm.
said, you have these kids here. And I had to think about it. I almost gave into that. But I realized that if my children made the decision to go away to college, guess what? They would have left me,
Yeah.
right? So I utilized this time as my way of going away to college.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm.
that's what I did. Like I said, by the May 17th is when I started the job. I came down the last of March.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to put down on an apartment complex. I moved in an
Yeah.
apartment complex. And from that time, God had truly blessed me. Am I saying this as a story? No. God gets
Yeah.
the glory out of this story. He gets
Amen.
the glory because it was not easy. Even though those good things happen. And I just want to say this, that in life, there's always going to be duality. And I think
Mm-hmm.
so many times we fail to see that. The gospel according to Frankie Beverly and Mays, it says joy and
Mm.
pain. It's like sunshine and rain.
Mm.
We are going to have that duality in life,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where we're going to have joy and we're going to have pain. And even when God opened up great doors for us, on the other side of that door is a challenge.
That's
We're
right.
going to have challenge. We're going to have some challenges. And so I just want to just put that nugget in there for those who will see this story and
Yeah.
understand that it has not always been easy. Yes, God get the glory. He has angels that has been watching over me, that's been going before me. He's been blessing me, but it has been a hard spot. And so I've been here for over 20 some years now, 27, 28 years in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And life has not been easy. I've been unemployed, but God allowed angels to bless me in ways
Yeah.
that I can't even think. Somebody told me about a program, and
Mm-hmm.
it helped me pay my mortgage for 21 months. You know, so when
Wow.
I say that God gets the glory
Wow.
out of my story, He gets the glory out of my story. I never stopped serving Him.
Mm.
Even when I fell short, God has always been faithful in my life. And I tell people all the time that I'm not here on my own. I know
Yeah.
that my grandmother and my mother prayed for me. So I'm living
Mm.
on prayers that's already
Yeah.
been stored up. Though your
Yeah.
prayers don't spoil. No prayer is spoiled. And
Mm.
with that being said, in 2020, I lost my son. Um, the night
Mm.
the night before he passed away, I talked to him for hours, and he talked about the things that I wanted for him, the things that he loved football, but he wasn't disciplined. I felt that needed to go to the next level. But the fact that I was able to talk to him, to hear his heart, to hear his frustration, and some things that we were trying to put in place, and for the next day for him to be gone, to transition, man, when I heard the news, I was shocked. I, I,
Mm.
I was frozen in time. My oldest daughter, she called me, and she was at the scene, and I said, "Let me see him," and man, that was one of those decisions. I mean, not a decision, but that was one of those things that I almost lost my mind. I lost my mind. I never forget. It was December the 19th, 2020. I was driving back from an event that I had went to. I was by myself, and I blanked out. I was driving. It was nighttime. What normally would take me 30 minutes took me 3 hours to get home.
And I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry for your loss. I'm deeply sorry about that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I learned doing grief is that it, it's like an onion. It layers start peeling. The enemy tried to put in my mind that I wasn't a good mother. I had him at a young age. Maybe I didn't love him enough. Maybe I wasn't there enough for him. There were so many things. And I honestly, I had to go to seek a therapist. I had to seek a therapist because it was like a part of me had left. A part of me, a part of my life had died. It had become numb. It just, I just lost it. And it took a while, and food became my friend. I gained so much weight. I really lost myself, even though I was praising God, and I was dead on the inside. And that's where I talk about the duality. You know, uh, there's a song that says, "Smiling faces sometimes uh, pretend to be your friend." I was smiling on the outside, but I was dying on the inside. I felt dark. My mind, I was trying to encourage people, but while I was encouraging them, I was trying to encourage them. There were nights that I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I was like, God, why did I have to go? Why did I have to lose him? Why did I have to go through this? And for a while, even in talking with the therapist, I would tell the therapist that, I was afraid to answer the phone. I was afraid if someone said, if I missed a phone call from one of my other children, that something was going on. It was that fear. The enemy has set fear up in my heart and my mind.
Yeah.
And she kept saying, she said to me, she said, "Celeste, what about thinking about something positive, nothing negative?" And then she began to help me. I created a tree. I created two trees. The tree, one tree, generational pattern. Another tree, the things that I wanted to see change in my life. And the things that we were plagued with. So what I did is I took a picture. I sent that to my children and my grandchildren, because my grandchildren are grown too now. And we had conversations about it. It hasn't been easy because I still feel the pain of grief. And shortly after losing my son, my dad passed away. I remember he called me up on the phone, and I could hear it in his voice. He died in February. I could hear it in his voice. And I asked him, was it painful? And he said, yes. But the mere fact that he called me, and this is amazing. When I think about this, Sandy, is the mere fact that two people right before transitioning called me on the phone to hear my voice, to remind me of the love that we share with one another. That was so special to me that my daddy did that, because the week before he left me a voicemail, and I keep that voicemail, and it says, "Hey, Cupcake, I was thinking about you. How are you doing?" And then the 2 days before he passed, he calls me up just to hear my voice so that I can hear his voice, And I, that was something different. That was something different. And so I buried my dad, and I'm really trying to go through the grief of my dad and my son, and I decided I was going to go spend some time with my daughter, my oldest daughter, and her
Mm-hmm.
children, and her oldest son was there. And I
Mm-hmm.
spent more time with him. We went out. He took me out to lunch. And we fussed a little bit because, I'm always on them about doing right, being men and women of
Mm-hmm.
integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there for a month. The day that I got ready to leave, he said, "Grandma, are you leaving?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Grandma, I love you. I really love you."
Oh.
I said, "I love you too."
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got on the plane, I made it here. I was here only one day. And guess what?
Yeah.
I got a call. He had been
Mm.
killed in a drive-by shooting.
Oh.
So when I tell you
Oh.
about loss and grief,
Mm.
uh, I have truly endured grief. When you lose a son, your dad, and your grandson, three men that have been very pivotal in your life, that have man, you think of the lifespan that we have. Um, and it hasn't been easy. And what the Lord showed me after my grandson passed away is the sense of urgency. The sense of
Yes.
urgency. Life is short. And whatever
Yeah.
God has called you to, it's time to do what he has called you to. The Bible tells
Yeah.
us that these are perilous times, which means these
Yeah.
are trying times. We don't have time to sit back and waste and say, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this next year, and I'm gonna do that. Whatever God has
Yeah.
planted in your heart to do it. Don't hold off.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it right then.
Mm.
Because one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I'm so grateful for, Sandy, is that
Yeah.
I spent 30 days with my daughter. That way, I spent 30 days with my grandson. 30 days with him. He was 33 years old. I spent 30 days with him. Not only with him, but his children. Because one of the things I've always said is, I don't want to be the grandmother that the great grandmother that kids know about. I want them to
Yeah.
know me. So when I
Yeah.
talk about my great grandchildren, you may think that I'm talking about my grandkids because I have a
Mm.
relationship with them. It's not a hands
Mm-hmm.
off or
Yeah.
distance, but it's a relationship, a close relationship where they'll
That's
call and say, "Hey
beautiful.
Gigi, how you doing? What are you doing
Mm-hmm.
today?" I get a text. Those things are important to me. So with that urgency, the Lord put it on my heart, was to
Yeah.
create. I wanted to create something to remember my father, my son, and my grandson. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
put something and curate something that when I pass, there would be a legacy of saying, "Hey, my grandmother, my great grandmother created this." And so I created. It's a coloring book. It's a
Mm-hmm.
coloring book, and it just talks about the many phases of grief that we go through. And of course, you can buy my books on Amazon. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, it's just a book, a coloring book.
Right.
It and I wrote one for children, because the
Mm-hmm.
language is very simple for children. The cover don't
Yeah.
look the same. But
Mm-hmm.
I wrote one for children because I
Mm-hmm.
believe that healing starts one crayon away. We are one one crayon away from being healing.
Yeah.
We can heal
Yeah.
together. You know, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate anniversaries, um, but when it comes to celebrating the life of someone, you know, we
Mm-hmm.
think about the mean things, but it's a reason why God placed all those people in my life. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they had a purpose, they had an imprint on my life. And so, with that being said, you know, when I think about grief, grief is now I have love, but it has nowhere to go. My love
Mm.
for my dad has nowhere to go. I can't put it on
Yeah.
him. You know, my son can't receive that love. My grandson
Yeah.
can't receive that love. But guess what? This
Yeah.
book right here displays the love and the urgency that I have for them. So when I was
Mm.
there, let me backtrack because I started with this book. But when I was
Okay.
there, the 30 days that I was there with my grandson, I was in the midst of writing this book right here, Purposefully Living
Right.
Not Perfect. I started writing this book, and I let he and his um, uh, other brother, who is 20, read the transcript. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
basically, this book right here uh, is a roadmap of helping people recover, discover
Mm-hmm.
their purpose in life. You know, many people think of purpose as a destination. You know,
Yeah.
when I went and I go back to that job when when I left that job, and you know,
Mm.
I thought that was my destination. I thought that was
Mm-hmm.
it in my life, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even when I moved here and I took this directorship, I worked at one of the HBCs here. I worked at one of the large hospitals here, hospital systems here, the number one
Mm-hmm.
indigent hospital in the nation. I worked that here in Georgia, and I thought that was my destination. Little did I
Mm-hmm.
know that God was going to release me and I become an author. So when I talk about coaching, when I talk about destiny, God will set you up. And that's what this my book is about is yeah, we all have a purpose, but our purpose
Yeah.
evolves. We're
Yeah.
evolving. God is evolving us. He's taking us and he's utilizing those gifts and those talents that we develop for something greater.
Absolutely. Wow. So, Dr. C, after, just take me back a little, after the loss of your son,
Mm-hmm.
your dad, and your grandson,
Mm-hmm.
and my condolences for the loss that you've encountered. What was life like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Oh wow. Life. Um, much prayer, a lot of crying, a lot of crying. Um, I start volunteering, um, and it wasn't easy. I would have to force myself to get up. Uh, I
Mm.
know for a couple of weeks I could not get up. Um,
Mm.
when my son passed away, it took me about a
Yeah.
month. It took me about a month to
Mm.
get up. And that December the 19th was the day that I got lost. And I remember making it home. I was afraid. I was in tears. And I remember
Mm.
making it home that night. And I remember going to sleep. And I went to sleep. And my prayer was before I fell off was, Lord, my son has passed away, but it's not
Mm.
my time to die.
Yeah.
And I went to sleep that night and I had a dream about my son. I saw him in my dream. And when I saw him, he was smiling. Oh, my son
Mm.
he has a big Kool-Aid smile. He looks like me.
Mm.
He has a
Mm.
Kool-Aid smile. And I saw him not as the man he was. but I saw him at the age of 19, and he was smiling at me. And there a sense of peace came over me. And the next day that I woke up, I realized
Yeah.
that I'm okay, that I'm gonna be okay, and that he was
Wow.
okay. So that happened with my son. When my dad passed away, what gave me uh, comfort was my dad was a Catholic, and so I have other siblings. I have other siblings, not by my mom, but I have other siblings, and I was able to do a Psalms, and I still have it, and just being able to talk to my dad 2 days before, and the week prior to that, you know, he had told me, you know, the cancer came back. My dad was 80, I think it was 82, 83 years old at that time. And so my dad had lived a good life. He was a fireman, he was an entrepreneur. Um,
Yeah.
and so, you know, my dad and I, we had some deep conversations. Um, we had some deep conversations. So that helped me. That was like when my mother passed away. I never forget my mom. She was 70, and she told me that she was tired. And I asked her, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" And she said, "Yes." And I told her, "Mom, it's a matter of time." That was on a Friday. My mother passed that Monday.
Oh.
So, you know, my mother and my dad, it was like having that conversation, that peace. My son and my grandson, those suddenly deaths, those surprising deaths, those are the ones that kind of rock my core. But
Yes.
I stayed with my daughter. I stayed with my daughter 30 days. I think it was 30 days or 60 days while she went through the grief. So I really didn't, my grief was helping her grieve and navigate. You know, that was my role there. Um, but you know, God got the glory, because even in that, God used me, this young lady,
Yeah.
because I did his eulogy. I did my grandson's eulogy. This young lady asked me to baptize her. I baptized this young lady. She was 17 years old. I baptized her. So when I talk about the duality in life, here I am grieving my grandson, but I'm still doing kingdom work. And the Lord used me to have Bible study with that young lady and baptize her. And I just adopted her as an extended of my grandchild. And so now she's away in college. Matter of fact, she came to London. She was there for a tour for fashion design. So she's one of my grandfather's grandchildren. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. All right. So how did you learn to carry yourself, to maneuver, just to get your life back after all these loss after loss after loss that you've been having, and especially when others could not see what you are really going through behind the scenes? What was the very thing that kept you going and got
You
you
know,
back on your feet?
that's a good question, because that's a good question. People didn't they didn't see my pain. They saw my strength. And when I talked to the therapist, one of the things she told me
Mm-hmm.
was I needed to tell people what I needed or what I
Yeah.
desired.
Yeah.
And Sandy, to be honest, that has always been a challenge for me, and asking for what I need.
Yeah.
That has always been a challenge for me. Um, I I think I'm trying. I think I'm getting better in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but no, I think even in planning my son's funeral, resentment set up because it just seemed like I wasn't getting the help. Everybody was looking to me, what we gonna do, what we gonna do, how we gonna
Yeah.
do this. And I
Yeah.
really didn't have, I say this, I have one friend that she did try to help. Um, she did try to help. But I don't know if I was open. I don't know if I was open to that help. Uh, because I wanted things a certain way. It was during the
Yeah.
time of COVID. It was during the time of
Mm-hmm.
COVID, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have a repass, but they was like, "No, you can't have a repass." But they had lifted the ban. It was just so much going on, and I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when people are really going through a hard time, uh, it's not what you say; it's how you say what you say to people. And I don't
Yeah.
think everybody is gifted when it comes to helping people grieve. And let me say this,
Mm. That's true.
and the body of Christ is it need more work, right? As believers, I heard people would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I apologize." And then they would say, "Well,
Mm.
how did he pass away?" Well, what happened? Did you?
Mm.
They want more intrinsic details. That's not
Yeah.
the time to be questioning people. Another
That's right.
thing is tell people what you can do for them. Offer. If you need me to help you plan such and such. I could do this, this,
Mm.
this.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
those are the kinds of things that you could do. If you don't agree with something that I said or something that I'm
Mm.
do at that time, even I don't care how close we are. That's not the time
Yeah.
for you to tell me, girl, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. The question would be, are you sure that's what you really want to do? Ask the question. Don't tell,
Mm.
that, again. Um, or if my dad was sick, well, he's in a better place. What?
Oh.
Things that we should not say to each other. Yeah, he's sick. Yeah, he was in pain.
It's not comforting at all.
That's not comforting. And I think as believers, we have to get to a better place on how we call ourselves being a comforting voice to
Yeah.
those who lose their loved ones. You know,
Mm.
when I don't think I did the best job, but I think I did a pretty good job when my daughter lost my grandson, which is her son.
Mm. Yeah.
What what she wanted,
Mm-hmm.
what she wanted, you know, uh, at first she was like, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I was like, do you
Mm.
think that that's a really good thing?
Yeah.
You know, um, I,
You gave her the op. You gave her
I
something
gave her the
to like think
option.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gave her the option. I gave her the option. We sat and talked when we were planning it. She said that this is what she wants. So while the person was there, I asked them a question. Well, what about this and what about that? So that she could have options and so she could hear it. And I asked her, well, what do you think about this? If we do this, we could do this. We'll have enough money
Mm-hmm.
to do this. So that she understood. Not, girl, don't you get yourself in debt. Things like that. That is
Yeah.
not something you have to bridle your tongue over.
Mm. And you know what?
so glad that you've brought this up, because I've had conversations with people, one or two people, regarding this same thing that you're saying, that sometimes people, when someone is grieving, they don't even know that the things that they're saying are just adding to more injury. And I'm
Yes.
glad that you have like put it really out there to say, you know what, it's not the time to be asking these kind of questions. It's not the time to try and push in your opinion. There's a way of suggesting something without.
Being overbearing, yeah,
Yeah.
trying to take over again. When it came to my daughter, I was not overbearing or
Yeah.
anything like that. Because months later, people were calling her because one of her friends' child had passed away, and she said
Mm.
to them, she said, "To be honest, I don't even know how we got to that point because my mother handled all of that. My mother was the one
Mm.
who wrote the obituary. My mother was the one who did that. My mother did that. That's what my mother did, you know." So then she called me, "Hey, I need you to help such and such with this." I was like, "What am I, a
Yeah.
funeral planner?" That was a joke between me and her. She was like, "No, but you know, I couldn't tell them. I didn't know." you know
Yeah.
so it's about comforting a person. And again, how did I get to this place? I don't know.
Yeah.
All I can say is it God did it.
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know the first funeral that I ever planned, I think I was 20. My
Oh.
great uncle, three generation
Hmm.
uncle. God bless me. I stayed with him, and I had to plan his funeral, and so
Hmm.
that was the first time I've ever planned a funeral. And then I planned my mother's funeral. So yeah, um, I don't know. God gave me the grace. You know, um, I don't know. He gave me the grace to do it.
Thank Him for His grace and manifesting it over your life. So, looking back now at all these things, what is this experience? How has this experience shaped your life, and what has it revealed about you? What is it that you have learned about yourself, and how have you been shaped by all these things that you've been going through?
I think one of the things that this says about me is that I'm resilient.
Mm.
Uh, and I'm not resilient of my own, but it's
Yeah.
the favor and the mercy and grace of God that
Mm.
holds me up. That even in face of adversity, that
Hmm.
God still is breathing on me. That
Yeah.
He is Jehovah Elroy. He sees me. That He's Jehovah
Mm.
Nisi. He provides for me. That He is Emmanuel. He's God with me. Um,
Mm.
and the lessons that I learned is sometimes in being the rock, you have to be able to be stepped on so others can be lifted up. And that's
Wow.
not even easy. That's a hard place to be.
And that takes a lot of humility as well, to be able to allow yourself to go through the process and allow yourself to be stepped on, like you said. It takes a lot of humility.
It
So,
does.
where are you?
It does. It does.
It does, yeah. So, where are you right now in your life, and how do you honor that part of your story today?
Um, I t- this is I honor my story by telling my story to people who are willing to listen. I honor my
Hmm.
story by putting it in writing.
Yeah.
You know, I honor my story um, in telling my grandchildren and my great grandchildren. Um, and where I am at today, uh, I do prayer. I do prayer ministry. I lead prayer for our church every Friday. Um, and Mondays, I am an intercessor for our
Okay.
church, for our local church. I teach the Word of God. I'm a listening ear. I just I want to be remembered, not for the accomplishments that I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm an honorary doctorate degree. I have a Lifetime Achievement Award, Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. I've earned my master's degree. I'm buying a house. I have four.
Yeah.
I had four children. I'm a great grandmother. I'm a grandmother. I'm a student of life. But I want people to remember on how I impacted their life.
Mm.
My book on Purposefully Living is about impact. I tell this story. I remember when me and my cousin was growing up, and
Yeah.
I've always been a little bit heavier, and I try to wear a pair of her shoes, right? Um, at one point, we wore the same size, but my foot outgrew hers. My feet outgrew hers. And I no longer could wear her shoes. But she had a pair of penny loafers that I wanted to wear. And I tried to squeeze my feet in them. And I realized that after wearing them for a day, I could no longer wear them shoes. And I
Yeah.
always tell people what I've gone through, many people would not have made it. Many people would
No.
not have survived the loss, the trauma, or the tragedy.
Yeah.
But it's by the grace of God that He's kept me and that He
Yeah.
strengthened me, to go a little bit further. Yes, the enemy tried to put resentment in my life. He tried to put comparison, make me want to compete with others. When I start selling, when I put my books out there, God had to fashion my heart because all the people that I've helped along the way, and you see the sales of the books, and people are not buying your books, and I'm like, God, you told me to do this.
Yeah.
People are not buying my books. I'm always supporting other people, but people don't support me like I support them. And I have to rest in being obedient. Being obedient. Okay, God, this is what you told me to do. I'm gonna do it. I'm not going to look to the right. I'm not going to look to the left. I'm not going to
Yeah.
focus on what they are not doing. I'm just going to do what you told me to do. And I can't say that it's always easy because I always got to go back to the Father and say, God, now you told me to do this now. Why these
Yeah.
people not buying my book? I support them,
Yeah.
but people are not supporting me the way I support them. So, you have to rest. I have to rely that God is Jehovah Elroy. He sees me. He's Jehovah Nisi. He provides all of my needs.
So, in short, it's all about you living by faith and holding on to that word and knowing that the time and the season is coming, but you just have to hold on, even though it
And,
looks like
yeah, and it's all about
things are going
preparation.
otherwise.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
preparation. I'm preparing. That's my responsibility. I'm preparing. I'm putting it out there. I'm preparing.
that's right.
Think about this. You're in London, I'm in Georgia, right? It's not by chance nor by accident, but it's by God's favor that you and I
Correct.
are
Yeah,
connected.
that's right. Absolutely. There's no accidents with him.
There's no accident,
No.
right?
hmm No accidents at all.
Yeah.
Definitely no accidents. So, Dr. C, for anyone who feels connected to your story and this whole conversation that we've had is really resonating with their lives, and they're in a place right now, because to be honest, I can hand on heart confirm that it's the grace of the Most High for you to actually be sitting there having a conversation with me with your mental health in place, with everything in place after going through all that you have gone through. Most people would not be standing right now.
Yeah.
So we really give him all the glory, because it is being manifested in your life. It's not even something we're reading in a book. It's something that is, I'm actually looking at right now, that someone can go through all this and still be standing. So if there's anyone who's connected to your story and they are really finding it hard to cope with this grief, they don't even know how to wake up tomorrow, they don't know how to take each day as it comes, because it's not an easy journey. It's not. Where can they find you, and how can they learn more about your work?
Again, I have a website. My website is www.purposefully living not perfect. You could go to my website. You could contact me through the form that's there. You can also contact me. My email address is Celica, Celica Coaching Ministry @gmail.com. So you can reach me through my website, www.purposefully living not perfect, or you could go to my, you could send me an email at Celisa Coaching Ministry.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure. And I'm going to leave your details in the comment section for anyone that is interested to get in touch with you or to follow you on your platform. I'm going to be doing that.
Yes. And also, if they want to, my books are on Amazon. Of course, I have 3 books out there. 2 are coloring books. One is for children. One is for adults. And then my my debut book, Purposefully Living Not Perfect.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm sure a number of people would definitely want to grab that book. Definitely.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
So thank you once again, Dr. C. Thank you for sharing your story so openly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for allowing us to walk back with you, to walk back into your story. And as hard as it is to talk about, but you allowed us into your space, and you were open, you were willing to really share so that you can help other people. And thank you so much. And your story reminds me of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a man deeply grieved, and yet he allowed that grief to move him into action. And the Bible tells us that Nehemiah sat down, he wept, but he didn't stay there. He prayed, he planned, and he rebuilt what was broken. So I can actually see that whole story in your story. You've allowed yourself the time to grieve, but you've also allowed yourself to start rebuilding.
Amen.
And just like Nehemiah, you didn't ignore your pain. You didn't, but it led you back to the purpose of the Most High over your life. And that's the best decision ever to ever make of our lives. So to everyone listening, let this be a reminder that you might be going through grief at this time. You might be going through things that you think, you know what, I don't deserve to live. I don't want to live anymore. This is too much. I can't cope. But if you really look at Dr. C's story, you realize that the Most High can take that pain, he can take those ashes and turn them into beauty. He can take your story to help someone else who is actually grieving like you are. So allow your heart to be open and to know that for every wound, for every pain, there is healing. The Father is willing and wants to heal you. And last thing is, I want you to know that the Most High is writing purpose into your story. So if you've watched this conversation and you've enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like this video, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the conversations that we will be having on this platform. So for now, we're checking out. Do take care. We'll see you again in another time.